Greetings and welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, as always, David Danto, and I have my good friend Tom Arbuthnot joining me on the call today. How are you doing, Tom?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Yeah, it has been a busy start to the year and a busy month. And I'll probably, as this goes out, I'll be in Redmond at MVP Summit. So looking forward to that and getting a full week of Microsoft news and discussion.
Yeah, we're finding ourselves on the road a lot more, obviously starting with ISE, and we were both so busy at ISE, I barely bumped into you. And
Yeah,
then,
I think we got to shake hands and a couple of drinks, and it was like,
yeah,
boom, the ISE was
it,
amazing this year. I was
it
so pleased with
was a
the,
very good show. And then
yeah,
I'm
just
I'm off to NAB, and I know a number of analysts, or some analysts anyway, are going to the Microsoft conference taking place at the same time in April, and so it's all kinds of stuff going on this year.
yeah. I'll be at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference. That'll be the next big one for us in terms of news drops.
That's the one in Orlando, right?
Yep. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Okay, so I think Dave Michaels will be there. I know a lot of analysts were going to go, but then Microsoft decided that they're not going to fund the analysts attending, so that got a lot of people kind of riled and upset, and who knows what's going on. So you're on our show this week because you are our interpreter agent. You are our Microsoft wind talker. We need to understand what the latest changes are. And before we even get into that, look, I really appreciate how far they've come. I like what Teams is doing. I like what Microsoft is doing in general. Does anyone at a high level at the company realize that they're making too many changes too fast and they're losing even their best friends in terms of understanding what the heck's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an incredible pace, and like not to make excuses because there's definitely some challenges, but like the whole world is moving quite fast right now. So
That's
if you look
true.
at AI in this year, we've had like Anthropic do their co-work. That was a huge deal. We've had OpenAI drop 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 all this year. Obviously, Gemini moves some stuff forward as well. So Microsoft are kind of trying to keep up with the AI pace, and the AI pace, the competitive pace, is pretty relentless. Having said that, Microsoft have a enterprise customer base who definitely struggled to keep up with it's this now we're all excited about Claude, now we're excited about E7, now we're changing the way this works, changing about works. It's definitely a challenge, and it's kind of annoy people by being too fast, or possibly, I guess, annoy people by being too slow and not keeping up.
Well, I've heard that excuse before, and I am going to say it's an excuse because yes, we are all coping with the pace of change this year, but I think some of these are unforced errors, which is my favorite word this year, unforced errors, favorite phrase. In that, there's no reason to change the name of Copilot or where it lists or how you access it. You can have a policy. Think of what Microsoft did around Rings and Patch Tuesday. They don't send out patches willy-nilly. They wait for one day in a month, unless it's something urgent, and they make the change at that time. There's no reason why they can't say something like, we're going to make our Copilot changes and our structural changes quarterly, and everything's going to stay stable for the next quarter around this. But you get these announcements to the point where I've made the comparison to the boy who cried wolf. It's like, what's important, what's not important? Do we even pay attention anymore? And you kind of shrug and give up.
Yeah, there is a risk of that, just an apathy to like, there's so much noise, I'll just wait for it to land and see what's what. And also, again, not just Microsoft, but industry wide, we've talked about this. There's a lot of pre announcing these days. So it's like, this is coming, get excited about this. And is it actually going to come? When's it going to come? So, yeah, part of my job is to try and decode it all and give people a fighting chance.
Okay, so let's dig into now that we've complained about Microsoft and we've gotten everybody upset. I hope not upset. It's really constructive criticism, but let's dig into some of the latest changes. First of all, what is an E? What is E5? What is E3? What is E1? What is E?
I'm glad you started there because often we just assume people understand these things. So E is the enterprise license SKU. So you've got business SKUs for up to 300 users, then you've got enterprise SKUs, and you've also got A SKUs for education, which have a specific type, and GCC SKUs, which are for government cloud and government cloud high and DoD. So E is the one that nearly every typical organization above 300 users, and maybe even below, because they might want the enterprise features, would have. And of those E licenses, E3 is kind of the base bundle realistically that most people have. There is an E1, which is like a super light bundle. E5 was the biggest bundle of things. And now, as is announced a couple of weeks ago, we have E7, which is a new bundle of capabilities.
So if I'm an enterprise user, E5, E3, E7. This is the classification of licenses that I'm buying, and then I'm talking about how many concurrent users I'm having, or how many users, whatever. It's the number of people under that, and that gives us the pricing and what's available in it.
Absolutely, yeah, and it doesn't mean that everything is included at every level. So even E7, which is the highest SKU, doesn't mean you get everything. It's a selection of capabilities. You might still add on additional capabilities. So Teams Premium would be an example in our world. That's not included in E3, E5, or E7. I would add that on for my $10 a month to get my extra capabilities. And there are other things in our world which are add-ons. E5 is kind of the when it launched, it was talked about to being kind of like the everything suite of everything you need as a core user. Over time, we've seen all the product suites develop and add-ons here and add-ons there.
So the latest changes you pointed out is this new tier of E7, which was announced. Do we assume that it's the biggest? The numbers correspond with the numbers of features in the suite?
Yeah, yeah. The higher the number that goes, the more you get in the box, and the more the price goes up as well, of course.
So then what's moved out of five into seven? What's now what are the latest, musical chairs that took place?
Yeah, so the big thing is E7 is a $99 a user a month list, and what that brings together, it brings everything in E5, so it includes E5 essentially. It adds in Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is an add-on to E5. It adds in some extra Entra Suite capabilities, which is their identity management system, some security features, and Agent 365 is the big new thing. So Agent 365 is Microsoft's positioning for essentially an agent management platform where you can control what agents have access to, which information, you can do audit trails, you can visualize what's going on agent to agent. So all the big AI companies are talking about obviously agents and agentic. And the question in enterprise is how do you deploy these in a supportable, scalable, safe, manageable way? That is Microsoft's pitch for Agent 365.
Okay. So along with this, some things changed, right? I saw that we used to have a certain version of Copilot in the legacy Office suite apps, Word and Excel and things, and now they're not there anymore. They're now on a different tier or something like that.
Yeah, so this is kind of a parallel change. So the E7 thing is one thing, that's a new set of capabilities. In parallel, Microsoft have an included tier of Copilot. So that is Copilot kind of basic, if you like, or the Copilot in without a license. And again, we've had some kind of name jumping around. Typically, that would be referred to as Copilot Chat. So up until recently, that would include the capability to use Copilot in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote as a side pane in the app, even at the basic free/included tier. You can't really say free because it's part of a suite, but that would be in there. Now, for organizations that are below 2,000 users, they will still get that capability to use it in the Office apps. But if you're 2,000 or above, kind of bigger enterprise type customers, you would have to step up to that M365 Copilot license to get Copilot inside the apps. You still get the Copilot chat, secure enterprise grade outside the apps, but if you want it inside the apps, you need that M365 Copilot license.
So M365 Copilot has nothing to do with any of the E's.
No, it's the EE. That's one line that I guess is sort of clear. Is the M365 Copilot license is always an add-on. It's an add-on to E5 or E3, or it's included inside the E7 as one of those pieces of capability. As I say it, it's not as clear as it sounds. Is it? Yeah, it's an add-on, except it's included in E7.
It's as clear as mud. Yeah, no, I'm remembering an old Sesame Street video called Silent E, and with the M65. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't really matter. So
The thing that's really interesting is Agent 365 is Microsoft's pitch for agentic management, but it's coming in as a user license. So it's allowing that user to create agents, and they're kind of talking about on behalf of agents, where the agent will work for the user and get to access all the users, what they call work IQ, the work context, the capabilities. We still haven't quite seen where Microsoft are headed with the idea that there will be potentially thousands of agents, and how do we manage like agents at scale? And I don't think we're there that in many organizations. Like there's a lot of marketing headlines about XYZ Bank has deployed 100,000 agents, but I think that's where we're headed, and it'll be interesting to see how Agent 365 scales to deal with, you know, autonomous agents doing all sorts of capabilities outside of being owned by an individual.
Okay, so there are two other moving parts, I think. Again, they're moving, so I'm not sure. That I'd like you to address. That I think you mentioned one of them before, and just where they fit into either the M365 or E5, E7. One of them, as you pointed out, is Teams Premium.
Yeah,
So
so
so Teams Premium has nothing to do with either of those licensing schemes, right? It's an add-on always.
that's right. And actually, we probably haven't talked about it. In fact, we haven't talked about it on your show, but in April, a bunch of features that were gated by Teams Premium are coming into Teams Core. So those are advanced webinar capabilities, advanced kind of event capabilities, and Microsoft Places. Previously, those were gated to premium users, and there's some actually, this is good news licensing. All of those capabilities have come into Teams Core. Teams Premium still exists. It gives you some advanced security capabilities. It gives you branding. It gives you some other different bits and pieces. Q's app is a big value there. And there's more coming for Teams Premium. But a bunch of stuff went into the core for every single user with what's called Teams Enterprise, the main team SKU.
And we've talked about before. I think you and I have talked about it. I know I've talked about it with other people as well. Is that some of those things didn't make sense being in Teams Premium. Like Places is really only going to be an effective tool if everybody's on it. Um,
Absolutely. I think Microsoft acknowledged that was the blocker. Like it was, my organization has 20,000 people and it only has office space for a few thousand. Those few thousand occasionally, also rather those 20,000 want to book rooms at different times. So they need places, but I'm not paying $10 a user when they're mostly working from home. So they flipped that model on its head now that all the core capability places are included. When you want to have a space be bookable, then you're adding on a license for that space to be bookable, essentially, be it a desk or a space, which is a much better model for the vast majority of organizations.
Okay, well, that's good news. And then the other thing that I wanted to go over, and you may have mentioned this as well, I think is live events, because live events and the management of live events has kind of shifted around a little bit as part of the latest changes, I think.
Yeah, so live events is got a public retirement day, and town hall is the newer name for Microsoft's up to 100,000 people ECDN broadcast type scenario. So again, all those capabilities have come into Teams Core, and Microsoft are on a trajectory. We had a really good Teams fireside chat this month where we talked about events. They're on a trajectory to try and make the features the same between a Teams meeting, a webinar, and a town hall. So think things like green room registration. They don't want users to have to choose between I'm doing a webinar and I get these features, and I'm doing a town hall and I get those features. So on some trajectory, you'll see Microsoft talk about events in general, and events could be a non-scheduled drop-in clinic that just lives in the Teams events app and people can see it's happening and they can drop in without being booked. It could be 50,000 people, all hands, everybody's getting on all at once, town hall. But the idea is rather than making users choose between which scenario and which features they need, it's kind of more of a continuum.
So I want to talk about Zoom for a minute, but I'm not really sure if I can call it a competitor to Teams or a co-existent. I mean, the branding on the Zoom side changes almost as fast as the Team stuff does. But
Yeah, it depends which account you're in, doesn't it? Because they're
yeah,
like a frenemies depending on the scenario.
exactly. But they just won an Emmy recently, not just, but recently won an Emmy for some of their broadcasting and content creation capabilities, where they're able to do things like ISO recordings and higher quality recordings and do some things that the broadcast community really likes, and why they gave them an Emmy. They don't give them to just anybody. Is there any talk from the Microsoft side of improving the quality of the video and the features of the video on the team side?
Yeah, definitely is a conversation. And like, I think it's fair to say Zoom have been ahead on some of that stuff. So we recently got 1080p in town halls at scale. So that's one piece of the puzzle, and ultra low latency. So those things are coming through to Teams. To be honest, I'm not up to speed on what Zoom could do on the broadcast. Interestingly, we obviously had Skype broadcast back in the day, which was a separate service, which
Right.
was used by a lot of the news networks and broadcasts. But yeah, I think it's fair to say, to your point, David, that I know some organizations that are super heavy Teams users who still use Zoom for events. And I think Microsoft would like to close that gap and say Teams is just as good. It has the CRM integration, it has the registration, it has the ultra latency, it has the ECDN, all the things you need.
Yeah, and this is the conversation that I've had with a number of my fellow analysts and my partner Dave Michaels and the vendors themselves, especially just coming out of Enterprise Connect, where Zoom made a very big deal about being at the show and Microsoft made a very big deal about not being at the show. And I won't get into the minutia there, but one of the things that I believe Zoom has not done a very good job with is they've moved into this AI space without bringing along their core video customers. It's more a marketing situation. Zoom is still by far the best video experience of any of them. I mean, we're using it right now to record because it produces the highest quality recordings. If I were to use Microsoft Teams to record, I'd probably have to run the thing through Handbrake or something else in order to make that recording something that I can edit from and work with. So certainly not taking anything from the quality of the Zoom product. They don't talk about it anymore. It's almost like they're being Kleenex and deciding they don't want to be known for tissues anymore. Now they want to be known for vacuum cleaners.
I
And
think that's
Microsoft is
part
gaining
of where the
share.
market. Yeah, it's part of where the market is. It's like interestingly, a lot of people that are using UC, it's a good enough bar, and then it's tightly integrated, corporately controlled, sanctioned, whatever. But to your point, I think if you think Zoom is better or you think Cisco is better, Cisco has some great stuff as well. Like they should be coming out and competing, and Microsoft are at their best in a competitive situation. But I think your typical user, David, you study this stuff, you can really see the difference between video bar A, video bar B, and video bar C. A lot of users just see, okay, I can see myself, it's fine, the rate's okay, on I go.
Yeah, no, that's very true. But I was going through all of that minutia to make the point that Microsoft Teams is gaining market share in terms of the number of users that use it for a meeting platform, and that makes sense because there's so many people on the Microsoft platform. But Google Meet is gaining market share over Zoom as well. Now, Google has done a really good job improving their product, but they're nowhere near as good as what Zoom is. And for Zoom to be losing customers to Google Meet
Yeah.
is sort of a
I, I,
situation of resume that's an another my favorite word again, the unforced error that Zoom moved into this AI so fast but didn't bring people along on the ride.
I think Google could be quite competitive and quite dangerous over the next few years because they're doing amazing things in AI. They have a productivity stack, they have a meeting platform, they've got some great OEM partnerships on meeting devices. Like they have all the component parts. And obviously, I'm on the Teams community side of the fence, but it would be nice to see them put some real weight behind their stack because that they have all the pieces of the puzzle to have a really compelling story, but it feels like just like all the other big tech companies at the moment, like Gemini is the center of the universe and everything else is a bit also ran.
Well, Microsoft is not a company that makes just Teams. They have a huge number of products. Whatever you're doing on Office productivity wise, you're typically doing on a Microsoft stack or on a Google stack. Both of these companies have video and collaboration platforms as a little bit of a bolt-on. Zoom, on the other hand, created the best video experience on the planet, the best meeting experience on the planet. And rather than try and keep that edge, they're saying, well, I'm going to compete with Microsoft and I'm going to compete with Zoom. Now I'm going to have the best AI. And it's they've picked a harder uphill battle. And unfortunately, they did it without making an effort to bring along their existing core customers. So again, they're losing market share right now for what is ostensibly the best product that's out there. So it's an interesting thing to watch the market dynamics as they change and go around. And as you pointed out, as AI is changing as quickly as it is and as fast as it is, we're going to see a lot of changes over the course of this year and next year.
Yeah, and I think AI, like everybody appreciates AI is the new battleground, right? And all the big companies want to win the new battleground. I mean, the thing I will say that I'm quite excited to see how it plays out is we're now getting million token context windows. We're getting really good meeting capture, albeit in person with multi-camera and face recognition and voice recognition, albeit just online meetings. Like we're going to get to a point where the getting the data and processing the data and pulling out actions and understanding what's going on is going to be a really important part of the UC or meetings
Hmm.
experience. And I think that's why, to give Zoom some justification, that's probably why their eyes on that ball, because they can't afford to fall behind on that. But I completely take your point on, while you think you've got some uniques in the video space, and while maybe Google, Cisco, and Microsoft are focused on multiple things, do you double down on, we're really focused on UC? But I think AI is the new battleground.
Yeah, that. And the other thing that no one is talking about, and let us be the first at this point, is the what's going on with AI that I'm sure most people that watch the show are aware of, is driving up the prices of RAM and driving up the prices of memory and chipsets. We were in a world where, Microsoft MDEP on Android AOSP bars looked like it was kind of the market winner. People came out with bars because it was easier. You didn't need to manage compute. You didn't need to manage BYOD. It was all there. It was simple. Now, with the Qualcomm chips that are in most of them, and I think the other ones as well, you're going to start to see that cost of chips and the cost of memory in the next generations of products start to become a very significant issue, to the point where BYOD may start to get an edge again. And I'm not sure how the bar manufacturers are going to handle, passing along with tariffs and with chip costs and with everything else, what was perceived as a sleek, inexpensive drop-in product may take a back seat now to putting in a peripheral and bringing your compute to the room.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm not close enough to kind of the individual component parts of a bar to know how much the RAM doubling doubles the end retail cost of the bar. But you're right, it's having a big influence on the PC industry at the moment. And I think at some point we'll see price bumps. There's also, to your point, just a problem of supply. Even if I'm prepared to pay any price, like, can I actually get reliable supply for the amount of memory I need? At the same time, we're hearing a lot of conversations, you would have heard this at ISE as well, about bringing small language models and processing onto the hardware so it's done at the edge. So actually, these units are going to need better CPUs, NPUs, and more RAM to deal with the kind of things we want to do on the edge devices.
Which, as you point out, puts Cisco in a good position because they've got the NVIDIA chips on their endpoint, and they're doing a lot more edge processing than everybody else now. But that is the big deal. That's what we heard with, one of the reasons some of our analyst colleagues have said is one of the reasons that Neat just hired Javed Khan as their CEO, because he's going to be reinvesting and pushing to get more AI at the edge. And I'm not sure if that's just their speculation or the reality, but it is something that everybody's talking about. It's going to happen.
Yeah, we saw some of that from an ISE, obviously pre that announcement. They're doing some clever things with AI on their platform. Everybody is at the moment, but I think that will be the next battleground. If I'm choosing between bar or board A, B, and C, maybe that's the difference in experience. I mean, you're right, Cisco have a leg up in some ways, being on NVIDIA chipsets with some capabilities they can do right on the box.
Yep. All right, so Tom, when am I going to see you next? I don't know if we're going to intersect anywhere. You're not coming to InfoComm. I'll be at InfoComm. I'll be at NAB while you're at the Microsoft
I'm
365
really jealous of
conference.
NAB. I've got no reason to go to NAB other than
Yeah.
I'm into the gear and it would be really exciting. So
You
no,
should show up for InfoComm. You should definitely be there for that, but I know
yeah,
you're in front of him too.
I'm being asked, so we'll see if I may twist my arm. But yeah, I'm trying to be good about travel this year, and obviously young kids and all that kind of stuff. So picking and choosing my trips. But my next ones will be MVP Summit, which is a private event for MVPs, and then the M365 Community Conference in April. And there's a big push on Teams at that event. Obviously, it's a wider event. It's whole M365. So if you are in our space, there'll be some announcements and news in April.
Terrific. How can people get in touch with you? How can people find out more about what you do?
Yeah, so Empowering.Cloud, if you're interested in the Microsoft 365 community, we have lots of content and podcasts and newsletter and all that good stuff. I also tend to knock around on LinkedIn, social platform wise.
Thank you very much, Tom. And thank you very much for watching as you do every week. That's it for this week's UC Weekly News. We will see you next week. Take care.